The ships came on a Tuesday morning. They appeared without warning, blocking out the sun over every major city on Earth. Thousands of them. Each one was larger than anything humans had ever built. They hung in the sky like metal mountains. Silent and waiting, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the United Nations space station and watched the alien fleet spread across Earth's orbit. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke into her communicator. "Command, are you seeing this?" "We see it, Captain," came the reply. "Every government on Earth sees it. Stay calm and wait for instructions. Stay calm." Elena almost laughed. Humanity had only discovered faster than light travel 3 years ago. They had one small colony on a planet called New Haven, 60 light-years away. Their entire space fleet was maybe 200 ships. And now, an alien armada of at least 10,000 vessels surrounded their home planet. The first message came 6 hours later. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, translated perfectly by technology humans could not understand. A face appeared on screens around the world. It was not human. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, skin like gray stone, and a mouth that did not move when it spoke. "I am High Arbiter Velketh of the Galactic Sovereignty Council," the creature said. "I speak for 4,000 spacefaring species. I speak for order in this galaxy. And I speak now to you, the beings of Earth." People stopped in the streets. Factories went silent. Children looked up at their parents with confused eyes. The world held its breath. "Your species has achieved faster than light travel," Velketh continued. "This makes you known to us. This makes you our concern. For 1,000,000 years the Council has maintained peace among the stars. We do this through a simple system. Young species like yours must accept protection and guidance from elder species like ours. This is not optional. This is how civilization works." Secretary General Amara Okonkwo watched the broadcast from the United Nations headquarters in Geneva. She was 62 years old, a former soldier, a former diplomat, and now the leader of humanity's unified government. She had seen war. She had negotiated peace treaties between nations that had hated each other for centuries, but nothing had prepared her for this. "You have 72 of your hours to accept our terms," Velketh said. "You will surrender all military vessels and weapons. You will dissolve your governments and accept council administration. You will submit to protective integration. If you do these things, your species will survive and eventually prosper under our guidance." The alien paused. His 4 eyes seemed to look directly at every person watching. "If you do not do these things, you will be removed. This is not a threat. It is simply what happens. In 1,000,000 years, no species has successfully resisted the Council. Many have tried. None exist today. You have 72 hours. Use them wisely." The screens went dark. For several minutes, no one on Earth spoke. Then the chaos began. Emergency meetings were called in every government building on the planet. Military commanders demanded action. Scientists begged for more time to study the alien technology. Religious leaders called for prayer. Some people screamed that humanity should fight. Others said surrender was the only logical choice. A few simply sat down and cried. Secretary General Okonkwo did none of these things. She walked to her private office, closed the door, and unlocked a safe that only 3 people on Earth knew existed. Inside was a folder marked with 2 words: Protocol, Prometheus. The protocol had been created 10 years ago, when humanity first began seriously researching faster-than-light travel. A small group of scientists, military strategists, and government leaders had asked a simple question: what if we are not alone? And what if whoever else is out there is not friendly? They had planned for this moment. Not perfectly, not completely, but they had planned. Okonkwo picked up her phone and made one call. "Wake everyone on the Prometheus list. We have 72 hours. Across the world, certain people received messages on devices they had been given years ago. Generals, scientists, engineers, hackers, soldiers. They came from every country, every background, every belief. They had one thing in common. They had all agreed, long ago, that if this day ever came, humanity would not go quietly." The next morning, High Arbiter Velketh received a communication from Earth. Secretary General Okonkwo appeared on his screen. She looked tired but composed. "High Arbiter," she said, "we are deeply honored by the Council's offer of protection. However, Our species has many governments and many opinions. We need the full 72 hours to reach a consensus. I hope you understand. Velketh felt something close to amusement. He had done this 200 times before, with 200 different species. They all asked for more time. They all hoped for a miracle. They all surrendered in the end. Of course, Secretary General, he replied. Take your time. We are patient. He ended the communication and turned to his second-in-command, a tall creature with scales like blue metal. They will submit, Velketh said. They always do. His second-in-command nodded. But over the next several hours, strange reports began to arrive. Human communications had gone almost completely silent. Normal broadcasts continued, but military channels were dark. This was unusual. Species facing extinction usually filled the airwaves with panic, with pleas, with prayers. Humans had simply stopped talking. Then the tracking officers noticed something else. Human ships were moving. But they were not gathering together for a final stand. As expected, they were spreading out, dispersing into the asteroid belt, into the outer planets, into the dark spaces between worlds. What are they doing? Velketh demanded. Unknown. High Arbiter. This behavior does not match any pattern in our records. Velketh stared at the tactical display. In his long career, he had seen species fight and die. He had seen species beg and surrender. He had seen species try to run. But he had never seen this. The humans were not running. They were not gathering. They were positioning. A young officer approached with another report. This one concerned the diplomatic communications humanity had sent over the past day. Standard messages of greeting, requests for clarification, cultural exchanges, all normal, all expected. Except the Council's cybersecurity division had detected something strange hidden in those messages. Tiny fragments of code, almost invisible, scattered across thousands of transmissions. Individually, they were meaningless. But together, High Arbiter, the officer said, his voice uncertain. I think they were not negotiating. I think they were attacking. We just did not notice. For the first time in 300 years, Velketh felt something he did not recognize. Later, he would learn the human word for it, fear. On Earth, Secretary General Okonkwo stood in the command center beneath the Swiss Alps. Screens showed the position of every human ship, every hidden weapon, every sleeper satellite that had been quietly launched over the past decade. Around her, men and women worked in focused silence. How much longer? She asked. 17 hours until the deadline, her chief strategist replied. All assets are in position. Cyber weapons are embedded in 60% of their fleet systems. The others are too well protected, but 60% should be enough for the first wave. Okonkwo nodded. She looked at the massive alien fleet on her screen. 10,000 ships. Weapons that could crack planets. Technology thousands of years beyond anything humanity possessed. And yet, humanity had something the Council did not expect. They had spent 3 years preparing for visitors. They had studied every possible scenario. They had built weapons specifically designed to fight a superior enemy. And most importantly, they had decided, collectively and absolutely, that they would never kneel. Send a message to all Prometheus units, Okonkwo said. Tell them the plan is unchanged. When the deadline comes, we do not surrender. We do not negotiate. We show them what happens when you threaten humanity. She paused and looked at the alien ships one more time. We show them that we bite back. The 72 hours ended at exactly midnight, Geneva time. High Arbiter Velketh stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Order, and watched the countdown reach 0. Around him, officers from 6 different species prepared for what should be a simple operation. They had done this many times before. A young species would refuse to surrender. The Council fleet would demonstrate its power by destroying a city or two, and then the surrender would come quickly. Open a channel to Earth, Velketh commanded. Secretary General Okonkwo's face appeared on the screen. She looked different than before. There were dark circles under her eyes, but she stood straight, and her gaze was steady. Secretary General, Velketh said, your time has ended. What is humanity's decision? There was a pause. Officers throughout the Council fleet leaned forward, waiting for the words they had heard so many times before. The words of surrender, the words of submission. Okonkwo smiled. It was not a happy smile. High Arbiter Velketh, she said, On behalf of humanity, I have one response to your generous offer. Another pause. We decline. Velketh blinked all four of his eyes. In 200 integrations, no species had ever simply said no. They begged, they bargained, they asked for mercy. They did not just decline. You understand what this means? He asked. We understand perfectly, Okonkwo replied. And we want you to understand something too. You came to our home. You threatened our children. You told us to kneel or die. Her voice hardened. We do not kneel. We never have. We never will. And if you want our world, you will have to take it from us piece by piece, and we will make you pay for every single piece in blood. The transmission ended. Velketh stood frozen for a moment. Then he shook off his confusion and raised his hand. All ships, begin the demonstration. Target the coastal city called New York. Reduce it to ash. 3,000 ships turned their weapons toward Earth. Enough firepower to crack a moon. Officers began the firing sequence. Nothing happened. Report! Velketh shouted. High Arbiter. Weapons are not responding. Navigation is not responding. Shields are. The officer stopped, his face going pale. Shields are down on 40% of the fleet. Across the Council Armada, chaos erupted. Ships that had been preparing to destroy a city suddenly found their systems frozen. Engines went dead. Weapons powered down. Lights flickered. In the darkness of space, nearly 3,000 vessels became floating metal boxes, helpless and blind. What is happening? Velketh demanded. The answer came from the cybersecurity officer, who was staring at his screen with something like horror. The diplomatic messages. The code fragments we detected. They were not just hidden in our communications. They were spreading, learning, adapting. They infected our systems days ago. They were waiting for this moment. Before Velketh could respond, the first explosions began. From the asteroid belt, from the shadows of moons, from places the Council had not thought to look. Human ships emerged. They were small compared to Council vessels. They were fewer in number, but they knew exactly where to strike. Nuclear missiles, launched from hidden platforms, slammed into the disabled ships. Kinetic projectiles. Simple metal rods accelerated to incredible speeds, punched through hulls that had no shields to protect them. Laser batteries that Earth had secretly built on the dark side of its moon fired in coordinated bursts, cutting through ship after ship. The Council fleet, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, was being torn apart by a species that had only left its planet 3 years ago. Return fire, Velketh screamed. All ships that can still fight, return fire. The ships that still had power obeyed. They were still the majority. They were still overwhelmingly stronger than the human forces. Their weapons began to speak, and human ships started to die. But for every human ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to appear. They were not fighting like a cornered prey animal. They were fighting like hunters. They struck and retreated. They used the debris of destroyed Council ships as cover. They sacrificed themselves to protect each other. Captain Elena Vasquez led a squadron of 12 fighters through the chaos. She had already lost 6 of her pilots. Her own ship was damaged, leaking atmosphere, held together by emergency patches and stubbornness. But she was still flying. Target that command ship's engines, she ordered. If we can cripple it, the entire left flank loses coordination. Captain, that ship still has shields. We will not survive the approach. I know, Elena said. But the ships behind us might. Do it. Her squadron dove toward the massive Council vessel. Defensive fire filled the space around them. 3 more fighters exploded. Then 2 more. Elena's ship took a hit that killed her co-pilot and destroyed half her weapons. She kept flying. Her last missile struck the command ship's engine housing at the exact moment its shields flickered. A glitch caused by the human virus still spreading through Council systems. The explosion was small compared to the ship's size, but it was enough. The engine died, and the command ship began to drift. Elena's ship, burning and broken, spun away into the darkness. She never saw the rescue shuttle that would find her 6 hours later, barely alive, refusing to die. On the Eternal Order, Velketh watched his fleet crumble. 3,000 ships disabled by computer virus, another 1,000 destroyed by human attacks. The remaining 6,000 were fighting, but they were confused, uncoordinated, and facing an enemy that seemed to have no fear of death. High Arbiter, His second-in-command said, "We must retreat. We must report this to the Council." Every instinct told Velketh to refuse. Retreat was shameful. Defeat was impossible. The Council had never lost a battle in a million years. But as he watched another dozen ships explode, as he heard the screaming on the communication channels, as he saw his perfect fleet being torn apart by creatures who should have surrendered, he made his decision. All ships, emergency jump. Return to Council space. Now, the surviving vessels fled. They left behind the wreckage of their comrades, the bodies of their soldiers, and something they had never left behind before. Their pride. On Earth, people emerged from shelters and looked up at the sky. The alien ships were gone. Debris fell through the atmosphere like shooting stars. And slowly, impossibly, people began to cheer. Secretary General Okonkwo did not cheer. She stood in the command center, looking at the casualty reports. 47 human ships destroyed. Over 800 soldiers dead. They had won the battle. But she knew this was only the beginning. What happens now? Her chief strategist asked. Now they send more ships, Okonkwo said quietly. Now they send their real fleet. And now they are angry. 2 weeks later, High Arbiter Velketh stood before the full Galactic Sovereignty Council. The chamber was vast, filled with representatives from 4,000 species. He had never felt small in this room before. Today, he felt tiny. Explain, the Supreme Arbiter commanded. She was ancient, her species among the first to achieve spaceflight, her authority absolute. Explain how you lost 3,000 ships to a species that discovered fire only a moment ago. Velketh told them everything. The virus, the hidden weapons, the impossible tactics, the way humans fought without hesitation, without surrender, without mercy. When he finished, the chamber was silent. Then one of the elder representatives spoke. I have studied the human data we captured, their history, their culture, their art. The ancient creature's voice was troubled. They create entertainment about fighting extinction, stories where they are nearly destroyed and somehow survive, games where they practice war against impossible odds. They have a word for this. They call it fun. The silence in the chamber grew heavier. This is not a species that fears death, the elder continued. This is a species that has been preparing for it since they first looked up at the stars. They have been waiting for us, perhaps for their entire existence. The Supreme Arbiter made her decision. Send the cleansing fleet. 10,000 ships, every weapon we have. Show this species what happens when you challenge the Council. As the order was given, as the greatest military force in galactic history was assembled, no one in that chamber truly understood what they were beginning. They would learn. 1 year had passed since the first battle. The cleansing fleet had arrived 3 months after Velketh's defeat. 10,000 ships, crewed by soldiers from 100 different species, armed with weapons that could turn planets into dust. They came to end humanity forever. They failed. Admiral Zenthra, commander of the cleansing fleet, stood in her quarters and stared at a map of the war. Red marks showed Council positions. Blue marks showed human positions. When she had arrived, the map was almost entirely red. Now, 1 year later, blue marks spread across 12 star systems like a disease that could not be cured. She did not understand how this was possible. The Council had every advantage. More ships, better technology, more soldiers, more resources. By every calculation, humanity should have been destroyed in weeks. Instead, they were winning. Her door opened, and her chief tactical officer entered. He was a Velketh, one of the insectoid species that served the Council. His name was Crix, and his 4 eyes looked tired. The report from Proxima Centauri, Admiral. Zenthra took the tablet and read. Her hands began to shake. They boarded our ships, she whispered. They physically entered our vessels and fought hand to hand. Yes, Admiral. No species boards ships. It is suicide. The defenders always have the advantage. The attackers always die. Yes, Admiral. But the humans did not die. They killed 4,000 of our soldiers in close combat. They captured 7 ships intact. They... Crix hesitated. Say it. They fought with knives when their guns ran empty. They fought with their bare hands when their knives broke. 1 human soldier, according to survivors, killed 11 of our warriors after being shot 3 times. He did not stop until he bled to death. Zenthra put down the tablet. She walked to her window and looked out at the stars. "What are these creatures?" she asked quietly. Crix did not answer. He had been asking himself the same question. On Earth, Secretary General Okonkwo walked through a hospital filled with wounded soldiers. The war had cost humanity dearly. Millions dead, cities destroyed, their colony on New Haven burned to ash, but they were still fighting. They would always be fighting. She stopped at the bed of a young woman, Captain Elena Vasquez, the pilot who had crippled the Council command ship in the first battle. She had been recovered from her destroyed fighter, more dead than alive. The doctors said she would never walk again. Elena was sitting up in bed, reading tactical reports. "Captain," Okonkwo said, "you should be resting. I will rest when the war is over." Elena replied, "Until then, I can still think. I can still plan. I can still help." Okonkwo sat beside her. "We are receiving defection requests." Elena looked up sharply. "From the Council?" "From species within the Council. Enslaved species. Conquered peoples. They have seen us fight. They have seen that resistance is possible, and they want to join us." For the first time in months, Elena smiled. "Good. Then we are not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We are fighting for everyone they have ever hurt." This was the truth that the Council had not expected. Humanity was not just surviving. Humanity was inspiring. Across the galaxy, species that had submitted to Council rule centuries ago began to whisper. They shared videos of human soldiers fighting against impossible odds. They told stories of a planet called Earth that refused to kneel. And slowly, carefully, they began to resist. The Velketh were among the first. Their homeworld had been conquered 800 years ago. They had served the Council ever since, used as soldiers and workers, treated as lesser beings. But watching humans fight had awakened something in them, something they thought the Council had destroyed forever. Hope. Crix was part of a secret network of Velketh officers who had begun to question their masters. They met in hidden places, spoke in coded language, and shared information with human intelligence agents. They were not ready to rebel openly. Not yet, but they were preparing. "Why do you help us?" a human agent asked Crix during one of their secret meetings. Crix thought about the question. "Because you showed us something we had forgotten. You showed us that chains can be broken, that the strong can be defeated, that tomorrow does not have to be the same as yesterday." The human nodded. "When the time comes, we will remember who stood with us." The war continued. The Council threw more ships, more soldiers, more weapons at humanity. And humanity adapted. Human scientists worked day and night, studying captured Council technology. Things that had taken other species centuries to develop, humans figured out in months. They did not just copy. They improved. They combined alien technology with human creativity and produced weapons the Council had never seen. Human generals developed tactics that broke every rule of galactic warfare. They hid fleets in asteroid fields for weeks, surviving on minimal supplies, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They used their own damaged ships as bait, drawing Council forces into traps. They attacked supply lines instead of battle fleets, starving the enemy instead of fighting them directly. And human soldiers simply would not die. Council medical officers reported that humans could survive wounds that would kill any other species. They could fight without sleep for days. They could function with injuries that should leave them screaming in pain. When asked how this was possible, captured humans gave answers that the translators struggled to process. "Adrenaline," they said. "Stubbornness. Spite." The translator had no proper word for spite in any Council language. The closest it could come was the desire to continue existing, specifically to cause problems for those who want you dead. Council commanders found this concept terrifying. 2 years into the war, something changed. Human scientists, working with captured data from Council archives, discovered references to a forbidden technology. It was called probability manipulation, the ability to change luck itself, to make unlikely events happen, to turn chance into a weapon. The Council had banned this research 1,000,000 years ago. The last species to develop it had accidentally erased themselves from existence. The technology was considered too dangerous for anyone to possess. Humans did not care about Council bans. Within 6 months, they had a working prototype. Within 8 months, they had a weapon. Admiral Zenthra received the intelligence report with growing horror. They cannot be serious. Probability manipulation is impossible to control. They will destroy themselves. Apparently, her intelligence officer replied. They are willing to take that risk. Why? Why would any species risk self-destruction? The intelligence officer was a young member of a recently conquered species. He had been studying humans for months, trying to understand them. He thought he finally did. Because they would rather die free than live as slaves, he said. And because they believe, truly believe, that they can succeed where everyone else has failed. It is not logical. It is not rational. But it is very, very human. Zenthra looked at her map of the war. Blue marks everywhere, spreading, growing, consuming. She had been fighting for 2 years. She had thrown everything the Council had at these creatures, and they were still fighting, still adapting, still winning. For the first time, she allowed herself to think the unthinkable. What if we cannot win? On Earth, Secretary General Okonkwo stood in a secret laboratory beneath the mountains of Tibet. Before her was a device that looked almost ordinary. A metal sphere covered in wires and lights. It hummed softly. Is it ready? She asked. The lead scientist, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, nodded slowly. The Prometheus engine is operational. In testing, it successfully altered probability outcomes within a controlled field. We made a coin land on heads 100 times in a row. We made a dice roll 6 every single time. And on a larger scale? Dr. Chen hesitated. Theoretically, we can make weapons malfunction at the wrong moment. Make shields fail when they should hold. Make engines fire when they should not. We can turn the enemy's own equipment against them. Theoretically? We have never tested it in actual combat. The risks are significant. If something goes wrong. Dr. Chen did not finish the sentence. Okonkwo looked at the device. Such a small thing to change the fate of a galaxy. The Council is assembling another fleet, she said. Bigger than anything before. They are done playing games. They are coming to end us, once and for all. I know. We cannot beat them with conventional tactics. We have stretched our luck as far as it will go. We need an advantage they cannot predict, cannot counter, cannot understand. She reached out and touched the cold metal of the Prometheus engine. We need to change the rules of the game. Dr. Chen understood. When do we deploy? Okonkwo thought of the soldiers who had died, the cities that had burned, the children who would never grow up. She thought of the millions of slaves across the galaxy who were watching, waiting, hoping that humanity would show them a way out of the darkness. Soon, she said. Very soon. The final fleet arrived on the 3rd anniversary of first contact. 50,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 600 species had contributed vessels. The Supreme Arbiter herself had come to watch humanity's extinction. Admiral Zenthra stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the Absolute Judgment, and surveyed her armada. Behind her, the Supreme Arbiter sat on a raised platform, ancient and terrible, her presence reminding everyone what failure would mean. Begin the approach, Zenthra commanded. Standard invasion formation. All ships maintain combat readiness. The fleet moved forward like a wave of metal and fire. They expected resistance. They expected traps. They expected the desperate fury of a species fighting for survival. They found nothing. Admiral, the sensor officer reported, his voice confused. Earth is empty. Explain. No energy signatures, no communications, no ships. The orbital stations are abandoned. The lunar bases are dark. We are detecting no human presence anywhere in the inner system. Zenthra felt cold. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. What about Mars? The asteroid colonies? Empty. All empty. It is as if they simply left. The Supreme Arbiter spoke for the first time. Her voice like cracking ice. They are hiding. Find them. The fleet spread out, scanning every rock, every moon, every dark corner of the solar system. For hours, they searched. They found abandoned stations filled with personal belongings left behind. They found cold reactors and dark hallways. They found a message written on the wall of a space station. In every council language, you should not have come. But they did not find humans. This is a trap, Zenthra said. Obviously, the Supreme Arbiter replied. Spring it. We have 50,000 ships. Whatever they have planned, it will not be enough. Zenthra gave the order. The fleet converged on Earth itself, prepared for an ambush from any direction. 5,000 ships formed a defensive sphere. 10,000 spread out to cover approach vectors. The remaining 35,000 moved toward the planet, weapons ready to burn away any resistance. Earth hung in space, blue and green and brown, beautiful and silent. Then the first ship exploded. It was not an attack. There was no missile, no laser, no weapon of any kind. The ship's main reactor simply failed. The containment field that kept the fusion core stable flickered for exactly 1 second, and the ship became a small sun. Then another ship exploded. Then 3 more. Then 10. What is happening? The Supreme Arbiter demanded. I do not know, Zenthra shouted back. There is no attack. Our own systems are failing. Random malfunctions across the entire fleet. It was true. Across 50,000 ships, things were going wrong. Weapons fired without orders and hit friendly vessels. Shields dropped at exactly the wrong moment. Engines pushed ships into collision courses. Navigation computers displayed incorrect data. Life support systems vented atmosphere into space. The fleet was destroying itself. The probability weapon, Zenthra realized. They actually built it. They are changing our luck. Somewhere in the chaos, hidden in a place the Council would never find, Secretary General Okonkwo watched the destruction on a holographic display. Dr. Sarah Chen stood beside her, monitoring the Prometheus engine's output. It is working better than expected, Dr. Chen said quietly. Their systems are failing at 3 times our projected rate. And our systems? Stable. The engine creates a field of favorable probability around designated targets. Our ships are outside that field but protected by the calibration we built into their systems. Okonkwo nodded. This was the plan. Evacuate Earth. Let the Council think they had won. Then turn their own technology against them in ways they could not predict or prevent. Send the signal. Tell our ships to begin their attack. From hidden positions throughout the outer solar system, human ships emerged. Only 500 vessels, a tiny fraction of the Council fleet. But they flew through space, where luck itself was on their side. Their missiles found targets that should have been impossible to hit. Their shields held against weapons that should have destroyed them. Their pilots made maneuvers that should have killed them, and survived. And in the Council fleet, the chaos continued. Ships collided with each other. Ammunition exploded in storage bays. Medical systems dispensed poison instead of medicine. Airlocks opened without warning. 1,000 different failures, each one small on its own, combined into a disaster beyond anything the Council had ever experienced. Admiral Zenthara tried to restore order. She screamed commands into communicators that malfunctioned. She watched her tactical display show impossible events happening faster than she could process them. She saw her beautiful fleet, the greatest armada in galactic history, tearing itself apart. This cannot be happening, she whispered, but it was happening. And it was about to get worse. On the Council homeworld, 2,000 light-years away, alarms began to sound. The Velketh had finally made their move. 800 years of slavery, 800 years of patience, and now, with the Council fleet far away and the galaxy watching, they struck. Velketh soldiers turned their weapons on their masters. Velketh pilots crashed ships into Council installations. Velketh workers sabotaged power plants and communication networks. They were not alone. Across the galaxy, other enslaved species rose up. The humans had shown them that resistance was possible. The humans had given them hope, and now, with the Council distracted by its failing invasion, they seized their moment. The Supreme Arbiter received the news in the middle of the battle. Revolution. On the homeworld. On a dozen other worlds. The empire she had built over 1,000,000 years was burning. We must return, she commanded. Abandon this attack. The humans do not matter. Our home is under attack. We cannot retreat. Zenthra shouted back. If we turn our backs on them now, they will pursue us. We must finish this. Then finish it. Destroy that planet now. Zenthra gave the order. Every ship that still functioned aimed its weapons at Earth. If they could not have victory, they would have revenge. Secretary General Okonkwo saw the weapons charging. She had one card left to play. Dr. Chen. Maximum output. Focus everything on their weapons systems. That will drain the engine completely. We will not be able to use it again for hours. I know. Do it. The Prometheus engine screamed with power. Across the Council fleet, every weapon that was about to fire experienced a sudden, Catastrophic failure. Power cells ruptured. Targeting systems inverted. Barrels melted. Missiles detonated in their tubes. The fleet that had come to destroy Earth was now a collection of broken, burning, helpless vessels. And from the darkness of space, from hidden bases on moons and asteroids and distant stations, humanity's true fleet emerged. Not 500 ships, 5,000. Every vessel they had built over 3 years of war, they had kept them hidden, waiting for this moment. Captain Elena Vasquez, commanding from a wheelchair on the bridge of the carrier Hope's Defiance, gave the order. All ships, engage. No mercy, no retreat. Today we end this. The Council fleet, or what remained of it, tried to fight. But their weapons were broken, their shields were down, and their crews were terrified. The humans cut through them like a fire through dry grass. Admiral Zenthra watched her fleet die around her. She thought about fighting to the end, about dying with honor. But she was tired. She was so very tired. Open a channel to the human command, she said. Elena Vasquez's face appeared on her screen. The human woman was pale, clearly exhausted, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. Admiral Zenthra, Elena said. Do you surrender? Zenthra looked at the ruins of everything she had believed in. What are your terms? The complete dissolution of the Council hierarchy, freedom for all enslaved species, war crimes tribunals for those who ordered genocides, and a new order, built on choice instead of force. The Supreme Arbiter will never accept those terms. Elena smiled coldly. The Supreme Arbiter is no longer in a position to accept or reject anything. Check your tactical display. Zenthra looked. Velketh ships, former Council vessels now flying under rebel flags, had surrounded the Supreme Arbiter's personal transport. The ancient ruler of the galaxy was trapped, helpless, defeated by the very species she had enslaved. It is over, Elena said. The question is whether it ends with more death, or whether it ends now. Choose, Admiral. But choose quickly. Zenthra closed her eyes. She thought about all the species she had helped conquer, all the worlds she had burned, all the lives she had destroyed in the name of order. Maybe it was time for a new order. I surrender, she said. On behalf of the Galactic Sovereignty Council, I surrender. Across the fleet, across the galaxy, the news spread. The Council had fallen. Humanity had won. Everything was about to change. In her command center, Secretary General Okonkwo allowed herself to breathe. 3 years of war. Millions dead. But they had done it. They had not just survived. They had freed a galaxy. What happens now? Dr. Chen asked. Okonkwo thought about the answer. The Council was defeated, but the hard work was just beginning. 1,000,000 years of tyranny had created wounds that would take generations to heal. But they had a chance now, a real chance. Now we build something better, she said. Now we show the galaxy what freedom really means. 2 years after the war ended, Crix stood on a hill overlooking a city he never thought he would see. New Geneva, they called it. Built on a planet halfway between Earth and the former Council homeworld. A symbol of the new era. The capital of the Terran Compact. He still remembered the day the Council fell. He remembered turning his weapon on his masters for the first time, his hands shaking, his heart's pounding. He remembered the fear and the rage and the terrible, wonderful freedom. After 800 years, his species was finally free. Now he was an ambassador. A representative of the Velketh people. One of 2,000 species that had joined the Compact in the 2 years since the war ended. The Compact was different from the Council in every way. There was no hierarchy, no master species, no slaves. Every member joined by choice and could leave by choice. The only rule was simple. No species shall dominate another. Humans had created this. They had won the war, and they could have become the new Council. They had the weapons. They had the technology. They had the fear of the galaxy behind them. But instead of building an empire, they built a community. Crix had asked a human diplomat why. The woman had laughed and said something that the translator struggled with. We did not fight for 3 years just to become what we were fighting against. Today was a special day. The formal signing of the Compact Charter. Leaders from every member species would gather in New Geneva's Central Plaza to sign the document that would guide the galaxy for generations to come. Crix made his way down the hill toward the plaza. The streets were crowded with beings of every shape and size, tall ones and short ones, beings made of metal and beings made of light, Species that had been enemies for centuries walked side by side, talking, laughing, sharing food. He passed a group of children playing in a fountain. Human children and Velketh children and children from species he did not recognize. They were splashing each other with water and screaming with joy. None of them cared about the differences between them. To them, they were just friends. This was what the Council had feared. This was what they had tried to prevent for 1,000,000 years. Not war, not violence, but this, species meeting each other as equals, learning from each other, growing together. The plaza was magnificent. Great banners hung from every building, each one representing a different member species. In the center stood a massive stage where the signing would take place. Crix found his seat among the other ambassadors. He was near the front, a position of honor for the Velketh. His people had been among the first to rebel, and the Compact remembered that. Secretary General Okonkwo walked onto the stage. She was older now, her hair completely gray, her face lined with the weight of everything she had carried. But she stood straight, and her voice was strong. "Today, we begin something new," she said. "Today, we declare that the old ways are dead. No more empires, no more conquests, no more chains. From this day forward, every species in this galaxy is free, not because we are stronger than the Council, but because we believe, all of us, that freedom is worth fighting for." The crowd cheered. Crix cheered with them. One by one, representatives from each member species came to the stage to sign the charter. Some walked, some flew, some were carried in special containers designed for their biology. Each one made their mark on the document, adding their voice to the chorus of the free. When it was Crix's turn, he walked to the stage on legs that trembled. The document lay before him, covered in thousands of signatures in hundreds of different forms. He picked up the pen that had been provided and hesitated. He thought about his ancestors, the first Velketh to be conquered by the Council, 800 years ago. The generations of his people who had lived and died as slaves, never knowing anything else. The ones who had given up hope, and the ones who had held on to it in secret, passing it down like a precious flame. He thought about the humans who had come from nowhere and changed everything. The impossible creatures who refused to kneel, who fought when they should have surrendered, who won when they should have died. He thought about the future, the children playing in the fountain, the galaxy that was finally free. He signed his name. The crowd cheered again. Crix walked back to his seat, and he was crying. He did not care who saw. After the ceremony, there was a celebration. Food from 1,000 worlds, music from 1,000 cultures, dancing and singing and speeches and joy. The galaxy had suffered for so long. Tonight, they would celebrate. Crix found himself standing at the edge of the plaza, watching the festivities. He needed a moment of quiet. "It is overwhelming, is it not?" He turned. Secretary General Okonkwo stood beside him, holding a glass of something that sparkled. "Secretary General," he said, surprised. "I did not expect to speak with you. Please, call me Amara. I am not a general anymore. Just an old woman who is very tired and very happy." She looked out at the crowd, human and alien, dancing together under the stars. "I never thought I would see this," she said quietly. "When they first appeared in our sky, when they gave us their ultimatum, I thought we were finished. I thought everything humanity had ever built, everything we had ever dreamed, was about to end. But you fought," Crix said. "You refused to surrender. We had to. Not just for ourselves, for everyone." She smiled at him. "Your people helped us win, you know. The intelligence you provided, the rebellion you started. We could not have done it without you." Crix thought about the secret meetings, the stolen information, the friends who had died in the uprising. "We were inspired by you. You showed us that resistance was possible, and you showed us that we were not alone, that there was something worth fighting for beyond our own survival." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the celebration. Then Crix asked the question that had been in his mind for years. "Why did you do it? You knew the odds. You knew what the Council could do. When they demanded your submission, why did you refuse?" Amara was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "There is something you must understand about humans. We are not brave. We are not strong. We are small and fragile, and we die easily. But we have something that the Council could never understand." "What is that?" We would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. Surviving is not the same as living. A species that will kneel for safety has already lost everything worth protecting. She gestured at the crowd around them. This is what we were protecting. Not just our lives, but our right to live them freely. And in the end, that is what gave us the strength to win. Crix understood. His people had kneeled for 800 years. They had survived, but they had not been alive. Not truly. Not until they stood up. Thank you, he said. For everything. Amara smiled and raised her glass. Thank you, Crix. And welcome to the family. The celebration continued long into the night. 1,000 years later, historians from dozens of species still studied the human paradox. They wrote books and papers and theories, trying to understand how a species so young, so small, so brief in the long history of the galaxy, had managed to terrify an empire that had ruled for 1,000,000 years. Some said it was their technology, their ability to adapt and innovate and create at speeds no other species could match. Some said it was their biology, their strange ability to push through pain and exhaustion, to function when they should collapse, to keep fighting when they should die. Some said it was their luck, the probability weapon that had turned the tide of the war, the chain of events that had brought them victory. But the historians who studied humanity closest, who read their stories and watched their films and learned their songs, came to a different conclusion. Humanity won because they believed they could. They believed in freedom when the galaxy had forgotten it existed. They believed in hope when hope was considered foolish. They believed in each other when unity was supposed to be impossible. And in the end, they were right. On Earth, in a plaza in the rebuilt city of Geneva, a monument stood. It had been placed there on the 10th anniversary of the war's end, and it had become a place of pilgrimage for beings from across the galaxy. The monument was simple, a human hand, reaching upward toward the stars, and surrounding it, 100 other hands, in 100 different shapes, all reaching up to meet it. The inscription beneath was in every language in the compact. It said, "They asked us to kneel. We chose to stand for everyone." Children played around the monument, human and alien, laughing and chasing each other without care. They did not fully understand what the monument meant. To them, it was just a statue in a park, but their parents understood, and their grandparents, who remembered the war, understood most of all. The galaxy had been ruled by fear for 1,000,000 years. Then a small blue planet had said no, and everything had changed. Sometimes the youngest species has the oldest wisdom. Sometimes the weakest voice carries the loudest message. And sometimes, just sometimes, the ones who refuse to give up are the ones who change the universe. This is the lesson humanity taught the stars. This is the story the galaxy will never forget. This is why they remember Earth.